AITA for refusing to babysit my nephew because my sister refuses to pay me. I 22 female am a full-time college student juggling two part-time jobs, trying to keep my head above water while navigating a chaotic and demanding schedule. For a while, I felt like I had a good handle on things. Between classes, work, and carving out a tiny sliver of time for myself, I was managing. But lately, my life has been appended by something that started small and innocent but has now spiraled into something overwhelming. My sister Lily, 27 female, and her reliance on me to babysit her 3-year-old son, Jamie. Let me start by saying I love my nephew. He's an amazing little kid, and being his aunt brings me so much joy. I'm not exaggerating when I say that I want to be someone he can look up to and rely on as he grows up. And I love my sister too. She's a single mom, and I know her life hasn't been easy. I admire her for working hard and doing her best to raise Jamie. But the way she has come to depend on me has gone from occasional favors to an expectation that I'll drop everything for her, and it's slowly but surely been grinding me down. A year ago, things were fine. Lily would occasionally ask me to babysit Jamie, maybe once or twice a month. She was always polite about it, giving me plenty of notice, and I was happy to help. At the time, it felt manageable. I'd play with Jamie, read him stories, and tuck him into bed if she had a late shift or needed a night out. I'd go home feeling like I'd done something good for my sister and my nephew, and it felt rewarding. But somewhere along the way, the requests started becoming more frequent, almost without me realizing it at first. What used to be the occasional text asking for a favor every few weeks quietly turned into a weekly thing. At first, it was manageable, one evening here or there where I'd rearrange my schedule a bit to help out. But then, once a week became twice a week, and before I knew it, there were weeks where I was babysitting 2 or 3 times, sometimes for several hours at a stretch. It wasn't just small, predictable chunks of time anymore. She'd call me out of the blue, often at the last minute, asking if I could watch Jamie because something had come up. These weren't emergencies either. They were things like extra shifts at work or needing to run errands. Of course, those things are important, but they weren't always so urgent that they justified me scrambling to drop everything to fill in for her. It wasn't just the frequency that changed, it was the timing. Instead of watching Jamie during quiet afternoons when I might have been able to squeeze it in, she started needing me during critical hours when I could have been working or studying. Sometimes, she'd ask me to babysit all evening, meaning I'd lose an entire shift at one of my jobs. Other times, her requests cut into the few hours I had set aside for studying for exams or completing assignments. And the thing is, I couldn't just make that time back up. Losing even one evening of study time or a few hours of income has a ripple effect when you're already balancing everything on a knife's edge. She'd call me and say things like, "Something came up, and I have no one else to turn to. Can you please help me out just this once?" And every time, I'd feel the guilt building in my chest. I didn't want to let her down. I didn't want to be the reason she couldn't go to work or handle whatever she needed to do. But at the same time, every time I said yes, I felt like I was letting myself down. I'd look at my calendar, at the pile of textbooks on my desk, at the notifications on my phone reminding me of bills that were due, and feel this sinking sense of panic. I kept thinking, how did it come to this? How did what started as an occasional favor turn into me being the default babysitter every time something came up? I tried to explain this to Lily. More than once, I sat her down and told her how much stress I was under, how hard it was for me to balance everything, and how babysitting so often and for free was taking a toll on me. But every time I tried to bring it up, she'd find a way to dismiss my concerns. She'd say things like, "Family doesn't charge family," as if that was the end of the conversation. Or she'd argue that I was in the best position to help her because I don't have kids or a mortgage. "You have flexibility," she'd say, as if my schedule were wide open and free of responsibilities. It was infuriating. Just because I don't have a child of my own doesn't mean my time isn't valuable. Just because I'm not paying off a house doesn't mean I'm not struggling to make ends meet. I'm stretched so thin that some days, I barely have time to eat a proper meal, let alone get a full night's sleep. Between juggling my classes, my 2 part-time jobs, and the relentless demands of college life, flexibility is the last thing I have. Things came to a head a few weeks ago when I finally decided to put my foot down. I told her, as gently as I could, that I couldn't keep babysitting unless she paid me. It wasn't an easy conversation to have, but I had reached my breaking point. I wasn't asking for a ridiculous amount of money, just enough to make up for the time I was losing at work. I even tried to be understanding about her financial situation by offering to charge her less than half of what a professional sitter would cost. I thought I was being fair. I thought she'd understand that I wasn't trying to profit off her or my nephew. I was just trying to find a way to keep my head above water while still helping her. But Lily didn't see it that way. As soon as I brought up payment, she exploded. She accused me of putting a price tag on my love for Jamie, which hurt more than I can even explain. She said I was selfish for expecting money when I knew how tight her finances were. Her words felt like a slap in the face, especially because I had spent so much time bending over backward to help her without asking for anything in return. She kept saying I should want to help her out of the goodness of my heart because she's struggling, and I'm in the best position to support her. She didn't even acknowledge the sacrifices I've been making or the toll this has taken on me. It was like she couldn't or wouldn't see that I'm struggling too, just in a different way. That conversation left me in tears. I felt awful for upsetting her, but at the same time, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being taken advantage of. I tried to explain my side, that I was struggling too, just in a different way. I told her how stressed I've been, how I'm barely making ends meet, and how I can't keep sacrificing my financial stability and academic success. But she dismissed everything I said, acting like my struggles didn't matter because hers were bigger. Since that argument, things have been tense between us. It feels like I have to wait for her to bring up babysitting or throw in some passive-aggressive comment about how some people don't value family. While she doesn't ask me to babysit as often anymore, the times she does ask come with a heavy layer of guilt. She call or text with that same tone of desperation, like it's not just a favor but a moral obligation. And when I say no, she makes it clear how disappointed she is. She doesn't even have to say much. Her silence on the phone or the way she sighs before hanging up says it all. It's like she's carrying around this invisible scoreboard of all the times I've let her down, and every no adds another tally against me. The most recent incident happened last week, and it was the hardest one yet. Her sitter canceled at the last minute, and she called me at 7 a.m., her voice frantic. She begged me to watch Jamie because she had something important to take care of. I immediately felt that familiar sinking feeling in my chest, the kind that comes from knowing you're about to disappoint someone you care about. But I had an exam that morning, one I'd been studying for all week, one that I couldn't afford to miss. I told her as gently as I could that I couldn't help her this time. As soon as the words left my mouth, I could hear the change in her tone. She started crying, her voice cracking, as she told me I was abandoning her when she needed me most. She kept repeating that she had no one else to turn to, that she was depending on me, and that I was being selfish for putting my own needs above hers and Jamie's. I felt like the worst person in the world, even though I knew I couldn't skip my exam. Even though I'd already sacrificed so much to help her before, I still felt this crushing guilt, like I was failing her as a sister. I kept apologizing, trying to explain that I had no choice, but she wasn't hearing it. The conversation ended with her saying she'd figure something out in a tone that made it clear she thought I was being unreasonable. She eventually found someone else to watch Jamie, but since then, she's been cold and distant, like a wall has gone up between us. She doesn't call to chat or check in anymore. When we do talk, it feels forced and tense, as if the warmth we used to share is gone. What's made it worse, so much worse, is that she's been telling our family about the situation, twisting the narrative to paint me as the villain. She's been saying that I'm greedy and heartless, that I only care about money, and that I'm turning my back on her and Jamie when they need me most. She's made it sound like I'm prioritizing some frivolous part of my life over them, when in reality, I'm just trying to stay afloat in my own overwhelming world. And of course, my mom has gotten involved, and she's firmly on Lily's side. She calls me to lecture me about how family helps family and tells me that I need to step up because Lily doesn't have anyone else. Every time I try to explain my side, to tell her how much stress this is putting on me, she brushes it off. "You're young," she says, like that magically makes my struggles disappear. "You'll manage. Lily's the one who really needs help right now." Hearing those words stung more than I expected. It was like a confirmation of everything I'd been feeling, that my family doesn't see my struggles as real or valid because I don't have a child or a mortgage. Just because I'm young doesn't mean I'm invincible. I'm drowning in responsibilities, constantly trying to balance school, work, and life, and every time I tried to set boundaries, I'm met with guilt trips and accusations that I'm selfish or heartless. It's exhausting, emotionally and mentally. It feels like no one in my family is willing to acknowledge that I have limits too, that I'm not some endless well of time and energy for them to draw from. It's like my role in the family is to give and give, no matter the cost to myself, and if I dare to say no, I'm immediately cast as the bad guy. I don't know what to do anymore. I love my nephew, and I want to be there for my sister, but I can't keep sacrificing my own stability. It feels like Lily is taking advantage of my kindness, and the pressure from my family is making me question everything. Am I being selfish? Should I just suck it up and keep helping her, even if it means putting my own needs on the back burner? Or is it okay to say no, even if it upsets her? I feel so torn, and I hate that this situation has made me feel like a bad sister and a bad aunt. Am I the asshole for refusing to babysit unless she pays me? Update 1. That evening, I was finally planning to take some time for myself. My friends had been asking me to join them for weeks, and I had been putting them off every time, citing work, school, or, more often than not, babysitting Jamie. But that day, I was determined. I was drained, emotionally and physically, and I just wanted a few hours to unwind, laugh, and forget about the constant pressure weighing on me. I hadn't even told my friends the full extent of what was going on with Lily and my family. I didn't want to be the one always bringing drama to the table. So, I decided to dress up, head out, and just enjoy for a night. It felt like a small rebellion, a chance to reclaim a little piece of myself. I was in the middle of getting ready when my phone buzzed. I glanced at the screen and immediately felt that familiar knot in my stomach when I saw Lily's name. For a second, I debated letting it go to voicemail, but my guilt got the better of me. I answered, trying to keep my tone neutral. Lily's voice was cheery, as if the tension of the past few weeks hadn't existed. She launched straight into asking if I could watch Jamie for a couple of hours because she had something to do. She didn't even acknowledge the fact that we hadn't really spoken since the last argument, didn't mention the things she'd said about me to the family, and certainly didn't apologize. It was like she expected me to just sweep everything under the rug and show up for her, no questions asked. I was stunned. For a moment, I didn't even know how to respond. But then all the frustration and hurt came bubbling to the surface, and I told her calmly, but firmly, that after everything she'd said about me to the family, I didn't feel particularly inclined to drop everything and help her. I reminded her of how she'd called me greedy, selfish, and uncaring, and how she'd painted me as the villain to our relatives. I said that her words had consequences, and one of those consequences was that I no longer felt obligated to bend over backward to accommodate her. Lily's tone shifted immediately. The cheery facade dropped, replaced by that familiar mix of exasperation and entitlement. She told me that I needed to come over right away, that Jamie needed me, and that it wasn't fair for me to hold a grudge when she was in a tough spot. I stayed firm. I repeated what I'd said before, that I wasn't going to babysit unless she paid me. I even reminded her that I'd already offered her a heavily discounted rate compared to what a professional sitter would charge, and she'd refused. Lily was furious. She told me she wasn't going to pay me, that it was ridiculous to expect money from her when we're sisters. She kept saying, "You're not a nanny, you're my sister," as if that somehow absolved her of any responsibility to compensate me for my time. And that's when I said it, exactly. I'm not a nanny. Which is why I'm not going to keep babysitting for free. I ended the call before she could respond because I knew nothing productive was going to come out of the conversation. I felt shaky and angry, but also a little proud of myself for standing my ground. I thought that would be the end of it for the night, but of course, I was wrong. Not 10 minutes later, my phone rang again. This time, it was my mom. The moment I answered, she launched into a lecture about how I needed to go help Lily. She said Lily had called her in tears, saying I was refusing to watch Jamie, and that I was being unreasonable. Mom didn't even give me a chance to explain my side before telling me that it was my responsibility to help my sister. When I finally managed to get a word in, I told her that I had plans for the evening and that I wasn't going to cancel them. I explained that I'd already spent months sacrificing my time and energy for Lily and that I deserved one night to myself. Mom wasn't having it. She told me I could reschedule my plans, that going out with friends wasn't as important as helping family. She kept repeating that Lily needed me and that I was in the best position to help her. That phrase, the best position to help her, felt like a slap in the face. How was I in the best position to help anyone when I could barely keep my own life together? I pointed out the obvious, that if Lily was in such desperate need of help, Mom could step in. She was retired, with far more free time than I had. Surely, if family was so important, Mom could help just as easily as I could. But Mom brushed that off, saying that Lily specifically wanted me to watch Jamie, as if that somehow made it my responsibility. I was stunned. The idea that my plans, my time, and my boundaries didn't matter simply because Lily had decided I was the one she wanted to help her was almost too much to process. I repeated, for what felt like the 100th time, that I wasn't going to babysit unless Lily paid me. Mom was horrified. She couldn't believe I would even suggest such a thing, saying that it was unthinkable to charge my own sister to watch my nephew. She kept going on about how selfish I was being, how I was prioritizing money over family, and how I needed to grow up and realize that helping Lily was more important than anything else I had going on. And then she hung up, just like that. No goodbye, no acknowledgement of my feelings or my side of the story, just a click and silence. I sat there, staring at my phone, feeling a mix of anger, hurt, and disbelief. It wasn't just Lily anymore. Now my mom was piling on, making me feel like the worst person in the world for daring to set boundaries. And the thing that hurt the most was that Mom could have easily helped Lily herself, but instead, she chose to gang up on me, to reinforce this idea that my time and my needs didn't matter as much as Lily's. Update 2. That evening, despite everything, I finally managed to head out and meet my friends. It felt like a small victory just to leave the house after the emotionally exhausting day I'd had. My phone buzzed constantly in my bag, and while I ignored most of the notifications, I knew some of them were from Lily and probably my mom as well. But for once, I refused to let myself get dragged into the chaos. I didn't want my plans derailed yet again by the endless cycle of guilt-tripping and arguments. I needed a break. When I met up with my friends, it felt like stepping into another world, one where I could actually breathe. The air was crisp, the city was alive, and for the first time in weeks, I felt a little lighter. We grabbed some food, wandered around downtown, and shared stories about work, school, and life in general. For a while, I managed to push the day's drama out of my mind. It wasn't just about the walk or the food, it was the company. Being with people who didn't expect me to shoulder their burdens, who didn't make me feel guilty for existing, was a balm for my soul. Of course, peace never lasts for long in my world. About an hour into our night, my phone started buzzing again, this time with an incoming call. I saw Lily's name flash on the screen, and my stomach sank. I thought about ignoring it, but a small, curious part of me wanted to hear what she could possibly have to say now. After everything, what more could there be to argue about? Reluctantly, I stepped away from my friends and answered. Lily wasted no time launching into what could only be described as a tirade disguised as a complaint. She told me that since I had refused to watch Jamie, she'd had to convince Mom to come over and babysit instead. At first, I was confused. Wasn't that exactly what I'd suggested earlier? But then she dropped the real bombshell. She hadn't needed a sitter because of work or some unavoidable obligation. No, she'd wanted me or now Mom to babysit so she could go out and relax with her friends. She said she deserved a night off, that she was exhausted from being a single mom and just needed to unwind. The absurdity of it hit me like a freight train. I couldn't stop myself from laughing out loud right there on the sidewalk. It wasn't just the audacity of the situation. It was the sheer ridiculousness of her framing this as my fault. She went on about how this whole thing could have been avoided if I'd just agreed to babysit in the first place, as though I were the one creating the awkwardness, not her. I could barely believe what I was hearing. After everything she'd said to me, calling me selfish, dragging my name through the mud with our family, accusing me of not caring about Jamie, she had the nerve to turn around and act like I was in the wrong for not dropping my plans to let her go party with her friends. It was beyond absurd. She'd spent the last few weeks painting me as the villain, and now, because I hadn't caved to her demands, she had to drag Mom into it. And to top it off, she was acting like her night out was somehow more important than mine. When she finished her rant, I told her exactly what I thought about the situation. I made it clear that I wasn't going to sacrifice my hard-earned free time to sit with Jamie for free while she went out to relax. I reminded her, again, that I wasn't her nanny, and it wasn't my job to make her social life easier at the expense of my own. The more I spoke, the more shocked she seemed, as though she genuinely couldn't fathom why I wasn't apologizing or backtracking. She tried to argue, but I was done. I laughed again, a real, deep laugh that probably only made her angrier, and told her there was nothing left to talk about. It wasn't my responsibility to make her life easier, especially when she couldn't even respect my boundaries. Then I hung up. It was a rare moment of feeling truly empowered, and for the first time in weeks, I didn't immediately feel guilty for standing my ground. When I returned to my friends, I didn't say much about the call. I didn't want to spend the night rehashing the same drama, and honestly, I was still trying to process the sheer ridiculousness of it all. The fact that she thought it was okay to try and guilt me into giving up my night off so she could have hers was mind-blowing. But what struck me even more was how much she believed she was entitled to my time, my energy, and my sacrifices without ever acknowledging or respecting my needs. For the rest of the night, I focused on enjoying myself. I was tired of being the family scapegoat, tired of being the one everyone leaned on without so much as a thank you. If Lily and Mom wanted to continue their campaign to guilt me into submission, they could do it without me. I was done letting their expectations dictate my life.